So last week I was lucky enough to be. Last week, or about 2 weeks ago, Fred invited me to take part in one of his podcasts that he's busy doing. I think the first episode went up yesterday. And he said to me, one of the questions was about presentations and things. And for those of you who don't know, one of the companies I own is a presentation company. And he said to me, do you still get nervous before you speak? And I know he wanted me to say, yeah, it's really, you always get nervous. And the truth is, a lot of the time, the answer is no. If you're preparing or delivering prepared content, you get quite used to it. So I said no, and then he said, no, you're lying. And I said, no, I'm not. And actually, it turns out that he was right. Because I don't usually get nervous. But having my wife, my son, and my daughter literally in the front row, that is unfair, right? This is not something that happens every day. So I'm going to have to be on my best behavior. I'm going to have to speak in black and white, less colorfully than I sometimes do. Although, I mean, she's heard everything, the youngster there. But anyway, it's a privilege. And what else is a privilege is to be part of this launch, this book launch. I was lucky enough to become a fan of Ian Russell now we get asked to speak at events a lot, as a speaker, and often the CEO will be given a slot, and you kind of roll your eyes because you're like, oh, okay, they've got the CEO guy in to come and do a talk. And I was sitting with my business partner, and we were considering leaving, but we thought, well, don't leave now. Show him you're interested. Laugh at his jokes, because maybe we can hit the guy up for work afterwards. So we're still sitting there, and then we're both agreed to like, this guy's really actually good. He's really smart and funny. And I went up to him afterwards. I said, dude, I would have lied to you regardless, but you're really, really good at this. And maybe about a year later, we were having lunch, and then we were talking about some ideas. And he was like, hey, what's it like writing a book? I said, it's pretty rad, you should do it. And he was like, hold my beer. And here we are. And then he even asked me, he said, he was like, yeah, if I do write a book, I'll ask you to write, to contribute to it. And he did, and I did. And then he said, well, now you've contributed, you have to come speak at the launch. And here I am. It's pretty crazy. Anyway. But I want to talk to you about something. I've got about 50 minutes with you at the beginning. And in this particular case, I'm somewhat of the fluffer of the proceedings. It's okay. She doesn't understand. So, and I want to try and set the scene for the rest of you, for the speakers who are going to come afterwards. And I want to start off with a statement. The statement is this: knowledge is power. What a lie. This is an absolute lie, and it's a lie we feed ourselves over and over again, and I think it's a damaging lie. Because nobody here didn't have the knowledge of what was going on during the apartheid years. But yet, we were blissfully ignorant. We acted like a lot of things weren't happening. Bear in mind that most of you look like you weren't born then, but go with me. What we do know is we know that there was and we've known for years there's a problem with the overconsumption of plastic, that we're using too many single-use plastic bottles. But yet, we still go to places and order a bottle of water because it's convenient. We know that pollution is damaging the world we live on. And yet, we just really want that extra pair of shoes. So we'll go with it. We'll separate ourselves from what's going on. We know that our oceans are being overfished. But damn, sushi tastes good. Somebody else's problem. We know the dairy industry, in fact, the meat industry in general, is capable of absolute atrocities. But we're going out to dinner after this, and I can already taste the milkshake, right? We know what's going on. We know that AIs could potentially really, really change in a damaging way what's happening or what will be happening to our future. But you know what? I want to be able to speak to my phone and get it to play the song or search the internet for me or call an Uber, so I'm going to go with it for now. The term we tell people, is that we're blissfully ignorant. But even that's a lie, because we're not ignorant. Saying that you're blissfully ignorant is a cop-out. You know exactly what's going on. You're just choosing to ignore it. And by the way, this is not a judgment. When I say you, I mean me too. We ignore things all the time. So what I've realized from that is that knowledge is actually overrated. Knowledge isn't as powerful as we think it is, because unless we use it and put it into practice, then it's just more information throwing around your head. So In December of 2016, I was taking part in, I'm a member of an organization called EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, and I was invited with 25 other people from around the world to Washington, D.C. to take part in a Global Leadership Academy. And on the first day, we were taken straight away from this hotel we were in, straight away to the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. If you haven't been to this, you need to go. Right, you need to go. And it was an amazing, sobering experience. You're walking, and there's points where you're so close to tears, you don't know what to do. You feel emotionally drained. The closest I can describe to it locally is I went to the Hector Peterson Memorial. Have any of you been to that? And you just feel like you walk around with the pictures and you realize what you ignored or what you pretend to ignore, and you feel sick to your stomach about what happened. And this is doubly hard for me when the person taking us around was this young lady there, this Holocaust survivor. And she was taking us through and telling us her story. And at one point when we were chatting, I asked her, you know, why didn't you leave? Why didn't you run? This didn't happen overnight. You know, it wasn't like one day there was no Hitler, and the next day there was Hitler and all the Jews were captured and taken away. Like, they saw it coming. They sat there and watched the SS slowly but surely pick up their friends, and they kept on thinking, this won't happen to me. Nothing this bad can actually happen. You know, we'll rely on human goodwill. This won't happen. This is so absurd, and yet we all know it did. And she said to us, she watched it happen until she was able to run away at the last minute. And it was crazy, and I find that we do that all the time. In fact, in this picture, it's a little bit of a, this is one of the embarrassing pictures of me. I mean, she looks like, she hasn't eaten in weeks, and I look like I ate her. Like, it wasn't a great time. I've got another photograph of that trip. So one of my favorite things in the world is a hamburger from a brand called Five Guys. Any of you know Five Guys? It's amazing. And their malted milkshake. Okay. Come on, you guys. You know your family's just judging. They're all embarrassed. Somebody ate all the pies. I don't know what happened, but I didn't notice it. It's so weird. And in fact, I do blame my wife, because I'd say to her, I think I'm putting on a bit of weight. She's like, I love you as you are. And that was unhelpful. I actually shot a video once where I turned around, because I got off a speaking gig. And a guy called Toby Shabshag said to me, good gig. In fact, I got off the BCX Disrupt gig with Ian. And I got off the stage, and Toby said to me, great talk. Wow, you've got fat. And I thought, okay, thank you. But what I did realize that day is, because we don't want to tell people. And the rest of the people, when I managed to lose some weight, by the way, I've lost some weight. I'm about 20 kilos down. When I lost the weight, people keep walking up to me and they keep saying to me, hey man, wow, you've lost so much weight. And I think, you bastard. Because that just means last time you saw me, you thought I was fat. And what I did realize is that good friends will tell you you've lost weight. Great friends will tell you that you're gaining it, because you ignore it because it happens quite slowly, right? It just happens over time. And the next thing you know, you're stuck and you're depressed. And I really, really was deeply humiliated. I do videos online, and I kept on not releasing them. And I kept on saying to my guys, I don't like the edit. I don't like what I said. But the truth was, I saw the edit they gave to me, and I was so humiliated and embarrassed about how I looked that I just didn't want to do it. And I thought, I need a catalyst. I need something to work towards. And then the gentleman in the back there, probably the most bubbling, inspirational person, Mark, give me a wave. Mark Sham back there, he's like, anytime you're feeling bad about life in general, just walk past him and you get in the Mark happiness field. And he just wipes off you and you're like, yeah, I feel good again. And he said to me, hey man, why don't you come and speak at one of my events? And I was like, sweet, Brad, that sounds good. And then he said, there's 5,000 people going to be there. And then I was like, okay. Gotta lose weight for this. So, you know, I was committed. I put the date on the fridge so that every time I would go there, I'd know the Suits and Sneakers gig is coming, and I felt like I'm gonna make this. Until I was gonna start tomorrow, the whole time until the morning of the gig. And on the morning of the gig, I got up, this is like a medium, and I had an extra large shirt on, and I was trying to button it, and I couldn't button it. And I was close to tears. I phoned Jazz. I said I was really, really upset. And she said, go get another shirt. Don't worry about it. And I drove to a Superdry store and I bought another shirt. It was a XXL shirt. And I put on a jacket. And that day, I arrived on the stage. And I was so embarrassed. Mark knew. I mean, we had an argument. I was feeling all upset about it. And I just didn't want to go on there. And I tried to find an excuse not to take to the stage. And eventually, I went onto the stage and I delivered a talk. And it was kind of like the low point of how I felt. I mean, look at that. I don't even know what I'm doing. They're like, yeah, get her done. But I promise you, that's a XXL shirt. This is a lot of me. And so I stand up there and I delivered this talk, and it was one I quite enjoyed. And then, I'm not a spiritual guy, but then karma came back and hit me upside the head. Because I produce a lot of content, I do a lot of talks, and you know what, it's nice, I deliver it to you guys, we'll make a video, a couple hundred people might see it, it's good for my ego. But in this one, for some reason, somebody said, hey, there's a video of a guy at his fattest he's ever been. Let's make that go viral. And 18 million people have seen it now. Some bullshit, okay? I don't know what's going on, it's like the most frustrating thing, it gets picked up by this group. And I was thinking like, come on. This is ridiculous. Now I have to lose the weight. Although I do realize sometimes you don't actually have to make yourself look bad because Facebook can do it for you. I did it. Be careful of doing these Instagram stories. I did one a few weeks ago. Every one of my friends like, haha, you look like an ass, and sent me that picture. I think it's a good look. I'm bringing sexy back. So here's the thing. And here's again where I want to come back to this idea of knowledge. Because we all think that knowledge matters. But I don't think it matters as much as you think. Because if action followed knowledge, we'd all have six-packs. Every single person in this room knows exactly what it takes to have a six-pack. Show me them. Right? We don't. We don't have them, and it's a problem. But I did manage to take some knowledge. I did manage to lose some weight. It was at my best, I was probably about 20 kilograms. I think I went back about another 2 or 3. But I did a thing called intermittent fasting. Do any of you know about it? So intermittent fasting is very, very simple. Basically, what I do, and I still do it now, is I eat between midday and 8 p.m. And then, for the rest of the time, from 8 p.m. through to midday the next day, I don't eat anything. I don't consume calories. I had to stop drinking milk in my coffee to move to black coffee, and I drink water. And actually, that forces you to be healthier all around. And there's a couple of things that happen. On one side, it creates a caloric deficit. So you're actually consuming less calories. I realized that I was saving 350 calories on cappuccinos alone. Right, just on cappuccinos, because they're about 75 to 80 calories per cappuccino. Black coffee is nothing, and with the amount of coffee, every time you walk into a meeting nowadays, hi, can I get you a cappuccino? Sure, and then they serve it for you. And just that alone. But actually, that's not how it works. How intermittent fasting actually works is it realizes that your body wants to burn energy from 2 different places. Right, so you have stored energy, and then you have readily available energy. And there's a little guy inside your body who's got a spade, and he burns and loads the furnace of everything that your body needs as fuel. So what happens is you eat calories, like, burger, and you eat the calories, and he's like, yeah, rain from heaven. And he's sitting there, and he's sweeping this into this nice big burner so that you can move and act and do things. And then eventually, if he runs out of food, he's got to be like, oh. And he has to walk all the way over to the fat cells and find some of that stuff and bring it across. But even if he's right there, if he sees the easy stuff again, he runs back. And what happens is generally you eat dinner, and then just as it's finishing, just as you're running out of fuel, and this guy looks like he's going to have to go down to the cellar to get some of the stored stuff, you feed again, and he's like, hey, bring it on. And that's how it works. Now, intermittent fasting says, let's make that guy work harder. So at 8 o'clock in the morning, when you're starting to need more food, you starve him. And in my case, that's when I go in a train. So your body needs to burn fuel, so he's got to work really, really hard and go back and get it. Is everybody familiar or understand this concept? Good. So here's what I think is a problem. I think that we need to reapply this to other aspects of our life. And the area I want to start with is knowledge itself. You see, I think we have I had an unhealthy relationship with food, and I think now I have an unhealthy relationship with knowledge. I think we consume too much knowledge. I think we've glorified the idea of learning and learning and learning and learning too much, and we've left action out of the equation. We finish one book, and then somebody else comes to us and says, oh, dude, have you read that book? Oh, you need to read this other one. Oh, you've not read that one. Do you even read, bro? And then you go to the next one. And in fact, the services we use, services like Goodreads, right? Her eyes. Services like Goodreads. This is a friend of mine. Gina has read 107 of 300 books. This is this year. This is a reading challenge. In fairness, look what she reads, right? What I do know is based on what this woman reads, you know exactly what her other hand is doing. Now, can we take a moment briefly for the awesomeness that is that transition that I made? I want to say I'm not proud of it. I am so proud of it. I was on the airplane and I was doing it over and over again. And then I heard the lady sitting next to me like, okay, we're good. So here's the thing. So, yeah, so there was an arrow. So this lady reads all of these books. I mean, it's crazy. She wants to read 300 books this year. That's how much content she wants to consume. Now, for me, and a lot of my books were business books. A few years ago, if you can see at the side, I read 33 books, and my goal was 25. And then the next year, or this year, I read 41 books. I can't remember what my goal was. The next year, I read 33 of my goal of 25. The next year, I read 33 of my goal of 30. And then I thought, you know what I used to do? I used to read short books. I was like, yeah. First of all, though, you should be reading short books. The burden of brevity for content should fall on the author, not you. Right? Shorter books must be distilled. I think all business book authors should be given a constraint of 100 pages, if you can. You figure out how to do the heavy lifting of making the book small. Because you almost know that point when you read business books where you get the joke, right? And you're like, I know what you've done there. And then you want to move on. Incidentally, for what it's worth, having seen Ian's book, it's not that kind of book. And in fact, that's why. No, but it's well, I mean, I contributed to it, so you all better bloody well read it. But I realized I had to change. So now I'm on book 11 of 1. This book about Hugo Cabaret, the guy from the movie Hugo. I highly recommend it. It's a fiction book. You should read it. But you can see all of these things. Here's one of the interesting statistics I did see. Check out this. The average books pledged, the average person on Goodreads says they'll read 59 books a year. What are you doing the rest of the time? When is left to turn that knowledge into action? You're literally going from, your brain has a channel capacity. It has a limited ability to hold new ideas in its area. And so have you ever noticed you've been reading a book and then you've got that idea in your head and you go on and you're running to meetings and you're dropping it out and you're talking about it, but then you read something else again the next day because you want to finish the book because we're completionists, or you want to listen to that new podcast episode, or you want to do those things. And then you move on. And to me, it's just far too much, and we're not giving ourselves the time to turn this into action because we're in such a bloody rush to gain knowledge. And I think what we're doing is we're over-consuming cognitive calories, right? We are consuming knowledge calories into our brains, but we're not burning them. We're not burning them through action like you do when you eat normal food. You go and you exercise, you burn those calories off. You burn those calories off. But when we read, then we just go to the next content, and we're turning those cognitive calories into cognitive fat. And I think it's wrong. And even if it's not when we're reading, I think, okay, no, I want to get into the zone. I've got some downtime. I go and I put on my earphones and I pick up my phone. This is my list of podcasts. This was a screenshot I took today. This is my list of podcasts that I have in my queue to listen to. So this is just a queue of episodes that I have loaded, right? My YouTube downloaded videos, 109 videos. Incidentally, if you haven't watched these two talks here, nobody's seen this one. Derek Thompson Hitmakers at Google. It will blow your boobs off. And then obviously Tim Urban. Here's the lie. The lie is what is on these earphones because it says noise cancelling headset. I'm calling bullshit. There's no noise cancelling. There's only noise prioritization. Because if it was truly noise cancelling, you couldn't make other noise come through it. We're loading more noise on and on and on, and you need to realize that information is noise. If you're not turning it into action, that's all it is. It's more noise. It's more stuff that you got to process. And the more stuff you have to process, the more stuff you're not getting done. The reason we're ignoring those issues in the world today is because there's just too many of them. We're too exposed to big things that need to be fixed, so we move on. So I want to suggest something else. I want to suggest that we have to do intermittent fasting, but for knowledge. That you've got to sit, when you read this book, you've got to sit there and you've got to read and you've got to take actions. You've got to turn those into, you read something, you don't just highlight it. You write down, because I just read this, I am going to do that. And by the end of any business book you read, hell, even some great fiction these days, you should have a to-do list of 10 items. Make that your goal. And do not let yourself start the next book until you've checked off 5 of those things. Because otherwise, the knowledge is wasted. It's just gone into your brain and it's become part of that cognitive fat that's sitting there. And that's the goal for today. So I'm not suggesting you don't read. I'm suggesting that you read this one. However, I don't want you to read this book. I want you to action this book. I know what's in it, and it's actionable content. It's a new way of thinking about the world we live in and the challenges we're going to be facing. And you need to turn around and say, this is not a conceptual idea, but this is something I can action. And that's the final thing I want to leave you with, and even for today, and for the talks you're about to hear, and then for when you pick up that book and read it. And by all means, do read it. But what I want you to do when you do is to take actions, not notes. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for having me.